Look, before we obviously hand it over to the team at Dell Boomi, what I wanted to do is to give some insight in terms of why we're we've gone down the path of partnering with Dell Boomi first of all. So the key challenge that we were looking at as an organisation that we kept facing with a lot of our different clients was integration. Okay, so we went down the path, we've got a very technically capable team. We went down the path in a lot of cases of bespoke integrations where we'd write scripts that would integrate between, for example, on-premise ERPs and CRMs to synchronize customer data, sales information, all that sort of information that really supports that single customer view and helps you drive value out of your CRM and drive your sales and customer service team. The challenge with that is that as one, it's fairly challenging to do. Two, as servers and software is upgraded, things tend to break. So the maintainability of that type of integration is quite challenging. And as time goes on, and as people move on from an organisation, maintaining those scripts becomes a real issue. So what we actually did is we went out to market and we had a look at all of the major integration platforms on the market that really provide ideally drag and drop integration and connectivity with major ERPs and platforms that allowed us to integrate with Sugar CRM and Salesforce and other systems more quickly and efficiently for our customers, and also in a way that provides an integration that's going to be well supported in the long term. So we looked at really all of the major platforms on the Gartner charts. We came across Dell Boomi, which happens to be the #1 ranked integration platform by Gartner. Okay, as of 2015, they're the leader in the Quadrant. But the other thing that we really found attractive from the point of view of Dell Boomi, there were two factors. One, they had a price point that was workable for both SMBs and mid-sized enterprises as well as enterprise organisations, whereas other integration platforms, even though they weren't ranked quite as highly, their starting points for integration were, really in the region of $40,000 to $50,000 for their professional products. Dell Boomi comes in at a fraction of that cost at a starting point and really allows customers to do simple integrations reasonably cost effectively. Okay, and the second thing that really was very attractive about the Dell Boomi platform was the fact that it allowed us to integrate not just cloud to cloud or on-premise to on-premise. It allowed us to very easily integrate on-premise to cloud and vice versa. Okay, so the architecture of the Dell Boomi platform seemed to be a bit more sophisticated than the other systems around in order to connect, for example, a local ERP or accounting system to, say, a cloud-based Salesforce system. We were able to simply deploy what's called an agent or a local agent onto the ERP server, configure the entire system in the cloud, and the system would then synchronize from there. So there was no big software downloads, very, very quick and easy to get up and running, and also flexible, powerful, and cost-effective. So that's really the reasoning around why we've chosen Dell Boomi, and once we established that, it was a fairly easy choice. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Vivek from Dell Boomi to really give us a bit of a run through of the platform and what it offers for our customers.
Okay, thanks Vivek. I've just handed it over to Vivek. Vivek, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I thought Jason was doing the presentation. I think we will pass it on to Jason.
Okay. Right, sorry, wrong Dell Boomi.
Okay, 1 second, guys. Sorry for that. Let's hand this over to Jason quickly. Okay, great. Sorry, Vivek.
No problems.
Okay, so Jason, you'll just need to unmute yourself, or we'll see if we can unmute you. Jason, you there?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Hi, sorry about that. I was busy there talking away, but unfortunately nobody could hear me. So thank you for your time today, and good morning everybody on the webinar. So my name is Jason Dixon. I run the Dell Boomi business for the Asia Pac region, looking after both our direct and our channel customers. I think you did a great job just doing some very high-level positioning of the Dell Boomi platform and how that might be leveraged, you know, for your customers moving forward. What we wanted to do today was we wanted to take you through a bit more of a technical overview of the Dell Boomi platform, help you understand, you know, where we come from, you know, and you know, where we play in terms of being an integration platform as a service. Some important architectural, you know, sort of, you know, very unique aspects about our platform, which have got us into the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the top right, and we are, you know, as you quite rightly identified, the leader in that space. We're also going to take you through a quick demonstration on the platform, very simple and easy use case, and I'm going to pass over at this point to my colleague, Technical Pre-Sales, David Arecki, to take us through the remainder of the presentation. Thank you. I think David might be muted. If you could unmute him, please.
Yep, sure. Okay, there we go, David.
No worries. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So as Jason mentioned, I'll just run through a few slides just to provide a bit of an overview of not only Boomi, but the technology itself, and then end that off with a little bit of a demo on the integration platform. If anybody wants to look into MDM or API management further, then we can schedule another session to go through that. But those pillars of the platform are another demo session in themselves. So just to add to what's been mentioned today, I just want to put a couple of other slides around who Dell Boomi are in case people on the call didn't know the background to Boomi. So very strong heritage in B2B, EDI, that kind of things. At around 2006, with everybody moving to SaaS applications like Salesforce, Sugar, NetSuite, etc., the company re-platformed the product into what today is known as Atomsphere, and it's still one of the only, or one of the few true multi-tenant integration platforms out there, and I'll talk a bit about that later, why that's important. And obviously Dell saw something in Boomi and acquired us in 2010. So to date, we've got just over 4,000 customers globally. We're a renewal business, and we're one of the only vendors out there to actually put our usage statistics online. So it's a very good thing to point out to people that you might be talking to about Boomi, because the only other one I know of is Informatica, and at the moment, I should probably update the slide, we're probably doing about 60 to 70 times the amount of integrations that they're doing on their own platform. And the final thing I found interesting with Boomi is a lot of the larger vendors, you know, SAP with PI and IBM with Data Power and Cast Iron and Oracle with Fusion, when they go out and buy companies like SuccessFactors, Taleo, Concur, etc., they don't actually sell their integration products underneath. They actually OEM Dell Boomi. And much like was mentioned before, and that's because of the agility and the speed and the ease of use that you can get with Dell Boomi to plug systems like SuccessFactors into a Salesforce or a Sugar or whatever it may be. And as we've already discussed a couple of times, you know, Dell Boomi's out there in front of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for iPaaS. So in terms of the technology itself, there's 3 pillars to the platform. So there's your traditional integration, which we call Atomsphere. So that's the plumbing that connects all your new world of SaaS to your old world of on-premise applications. And what we tend to find is once customers get those integrations up and running and have those applications talking to each other, they then tend to run into a data governance issue. So who owns the view of the customer? Is it Salesforce? Is it SAP? Is it Sugar? Is it a custom database? And that's when master data management comes in to relieve that burden and do all the data validation, data enrichment, and come up with the golden record of what that customer is or who that customer is. So for example, if someone were to enter a new contact into Salesforce, that information via Atomsphere would go into the MDM, go through a bunch of data validation and enrichment rules. If it passes all the tests, then any other system in the network that needs to know about that customer will get a copy of that data. And once we have the data governance issue solved, then some of our customers start looking at exposing that data either internally or externally via APIs. And they may do that because they're building mobile apps, or they may be looking to create new web portals very quickly and easily to, plug in new suppliers or get new products out to market faster, and APIs enable you to do that. So because we're a true multi-tenant cloud platform, it means there's absolutely no hardware or software to install and maintain. All the development tooling, the testing, the deployment and the monitoring tools, everything's accessible via a web browser. The only time you may need to install something is, as was mentioned before, our runtime engine, if you're going to run that on-premise. But I'll talk through some of those deployment scenarios a little bit later. Upgrades are completely automatic. You don't have to take them, but if you do, we've got processes in place, and there's a feature called Boomi Assure, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, which helps you with those upgrades. So we ensure that you don't break anything in your integrations that you've done today. We're still one of the only few companies out there who puts our pricing on our website. So that allows people to have a look at, what they can do with the platform, and they can start very small if they're a small business, or they can, pick everything they want, hundreds of connectors, high availability, message broker, etc., if they're an enterprise organization. And I'll talk a little bit later again about why multi-tenant is important in this case. So when you look at what we can do with the platform, we cover all your traditional integration needs. So your application integration, plugging in Salesforce to a database or SAP or whatever it may be. Your traditional ETL, so doing large bulk uploads of data into end systems, so maybe a long list of leads into Salesforce. And your old world of EDI and B2B, where you may be interfacing with multiple trading partners and they're sending various EDI documents into you to order stock or, purchase products or whatever it may be. And as I mentioned, once you've got the integration up and running, then that's when master data management comes into play. And the good things with Boomi is master data management as a product came out about 3 years ago. So we don't have that legacy on-premise software that a lot of our competition has, and because of that we've been able to put a lot of features into our cloud MDM platform that a lot of those older vendors consider next generation. So things like multi-domain, where you can model data like your customer or a lead or a product or a location. It really doesn't matter what it is. And as I mentioned, if you make that change in Salesforce, it gets pushed out in real time to other systems as required. And as part of that data validation and data enrichment that happens in the MDM, we can plug out or connect out to various data quality tools. So Locate is a very good example for address checking. So if somebody was entering a lead or contact information in Sugar or Salesforce, and maybe they misspelt the address, or they've left off the state or something like that, a tool like Locate would be able to pass that addressing information, fix up any mistakes, and provide back to you the correct information. And obviously that would be repopulated back into Salesforce and any other system that may require it. And then finally, there's API management to expose any of this data should you see fit. And underpinning all of these use cases is obviously our enterprise-grade platform. So within there, we've got features like the molecule to do high availability and disaster recovery. You can have multiple environments. So when you build an integration and deploy it to dev, you can migrate it through the tool into test, into QA, and then into production. There's a business rules engine in the product, which I'll show you as part of the demo, as well as a message broker. There's advanced user security for data encryption. So there's quite a lot to the platform itself. Any questions at this point before I go into a couple of slides on each pillar? Nope.
No questions coming up.
Okay, all good. So if we start with AtomSphere, we basically look at how AtomSphere works as a series of 3 steps. So you'd use our online tooling to build your integration. It's a drag and drop environment. It's all about configuration rather than coding. And if you ever go to a Gartner event or read a Gartner white paper, they talk more and more these days about citizen integrator tooling, and that's really where Boomi is and will continue to be in the future. So once you build out your integrations in the web tools and you've tested them there and you're happy with them, that's when you deploy them to our integration runtime, which we call an Atom. And once they're running on an Atom, then you use that same web browser interface to manage them and see, you know, what are your integrations doing? Have they failed? How many records they're processing? You know, whatever operations may require. So to tell you a little bit more about the Atom, it's a very lightweight runtime engine. It's about 30, 40 megs in size, only requires Java as a prerequisite, and basically you can install it on-premise in your own private cloud, like an Amazon or an Azure, or using our own Atom Cloud, which we run on Rackspace. So it's the engine which runs your integrations and allows you to plug all those different applications together. And because we don't charge by, you know, CPU core, and because we have a centralized system, those Atoms can be installed anywhere around the world, or, you know, they could be installed in different servers within your own organization or wherever they may be, because we're a truly multi-tenant platform. It doesn't matter to us, and we can see what's happening with the Atoms and what's happening with the integrations wherever they may be. So in terms of deployment, we typically come across 4 scenarios. So the first is your traditional on-premise to on-premise integration. So this is where, you know, somebody might have a database and they want to connect that database into SAP. Well, with Dell Boomi, what you do is you take the Atom and install it on a server somewhere on the network behind your firewall. And then once that Atom's up and running, what it does is it connects out to the Dell Boomi platform and says, do you have an integration for me? And if a developer has built an integration up there, it pulls that integration down from the UI and installs that integration on the Atom. And then from that point in time, the Oracle database is talking to SAP and vice versa through this Atom. And what you'll see here is the data only ever goes back and forth on premise. The customer data never goes back up into the Dell Boomi platform. So your customer data is always secure behind your firewall, and that's a very important point to note. The only data the Atom ever sends back up to the Dell Boomi platform is login status information for monitoring purposes. The second use case we come across is when organizations start bringing in SaaS applications into the business. So they might be looking at a Salesforce or a Sugar CRM. And what we tend to look at is your center of gravity. If most of your applications and your data are still on-premise, would recommend leaving that Atom on-premise. And as part of the integration, it can connect out to Salesforce in the cloud and connect it back into the database in SAP. The third use case we see is the new world of cloud-to-cloud integration. So this is where somebody has no applications on premise, or they may only have a few. So in this case, would recommend deploying the Atom either within your own private Atom cloud, which you may run on an Amazon or an Azure, or you could use Dell Boomi's Atom cloud, which runs on Rackspace. And in this case, all the data is up there in the cloud going back and forth, and no data is ever going through any on-premise systems. And the final case we see is where a large enterprise organization may have already invested millions of dollars in a product from TIBCO or Oracle or IBM. And, that's great for doing the day-to-day grunt work of connecting up databases and SAP and, your data warehouse systems and stuff like that. But as the organization grows or into this new world, they see they've got to develop new mobile apps to garner new interest. They might have to build new web portals, etc., and plug in new SaaS applications to provide those capabilities. So that's typically where Boomi is then brought in as an agility layer, and the Atom sits over the top of the existing infrastructure. And what tends to happen is, to start with, Boomi will do those new integrations quickly and easily and get those new products and features out to market really, really fast. And then over time, the integrations on the back end, which do to your day-to-day running of the business, like your financials and things like that, they slowly get migrated over to Dell Boomi as well. So that's what we see in terms of deployments. And just to end the discussion on integration, I find this slide's probably one of the more important in the deck, because it covers why multi-tenancy is so important and why we're one of the few true multi-tenant products out there. Because we're multi-tenant and we're a centralized system, we can essentially see everything that's going on in our infrastructure. So out of our just under 4,000 customer base, we can see what's going on, who's doing what. So you can opt out of that. But because we have those capabilities, we can gain a lot of insight and provide features to the platform that some of our competitors can't. So the first is called Boomi Suggest. So when somebody's doing a data map, so they may be mapping data from a CSV file into Salesforce, you might be uploading a number of contacts or new leads, something like that. Rather than the developer sitting there and mapping each field across from the CSV file to the contact data structure in Salesforce, they can click on Boomi Suggest, because more likely than not, somebody within our customer base has done that before. So today we've indexed over 25 million different data transformations, and 93% of our customers accept the suggested transformation. So what that means is, if they select accept, you'll get all the data mapping done for you. But not only that, in the middle of the data mapping, and I'll show you this as part of the demo, you can have a lot of complex functionality like string manipulation, doing maps. You can do lookups into other systems. So rather than mapping, NSW across from one system to the other, you may want to do a lookup into a table and translate NSW to New South Wales, for example. Or you may want to do a call out to an application based on the data coming in, look something up in another application, and then the result of that, map that across. So we capture those functions as well. So with all of this, it may not get you 100% of the way there, but it gets you 90% of the way there, and you can modify that suggestion just for the last couple of parameters. So that's a real big time saver, and it's it really speaks to the citizen integrator side of the product. Boomi Assure is more around the automatic upgrades. So as I mentioned, you can take upgrades as you build your integrations, but sometimes people might go, no, we'll settle on this version of a connector or the Atom runtime or whatever it may be. And in the future, if they wish to upgrade any of their components, they can run their integration through Boomi Assure. So what Boomi Assure will do will run your integration against every future release and tell you, what you need to change or what may break should you upgrade. So it's a handy little tool to help with maintainability going forward. And the final feature is Boomi Resolve. So when you're building your integrations, you might run into an error and you may have no idea why or how to resolve that error. And again, more than likely, somebody within our customer base has hit that error before. So what Boomi Resolve does, it will post you suggestions for common errors and give you a quick fix as to, you know, how to go forward and how to fix that. So all of these are only possible because we're a true multi-tenant platform. So at this point, before discussing MDM and APIs, I'll just jump out into the product itself. If there's any questions, you know, feel free to interrupt as well as we go along. So if you're a developer, this is where you'd spend most of your time. So this is the Boomi platform, and as you can see, it's accessed via web browser just by logging into platform.boomi.com. And all three of our pillars, AtomSphere, MDM, and API management, are all available through the same web interface. So the idea here is it's a drag and drop environment. You drag down components, you configure them up rather than doing any coding, and connect them up to each other to build your integration process. So I put a simple little use case together where I said, well, somebody's got a CSV file for me full of lead information, and I want to upload that lead information into Salesforce. And what you can see here is I've got Wendy Ater and as a duplicate, and just to show you some more of the advanced features of the integration process as we go through it. So that's essentially the use case itself. And what we want to do is, if there are any duplicates, we want to send an email out to my Gmail inbox telling me what those duplicates are from that CSV file. So if we look at what you do on a day-to-day basis building out these integrations, it's a quite straightforward process once you've been through our training courses on how to use the environment. So at its core, what we're trying to do is get a file from an FTP site. We're trying to use our data mapping technology to convert that CSV file into what the Salesforce API expects, and then we use our Salesforce connector to create that lead. So in terms of our connectors, they're the endpoints. They are what allow you to plug into the end applications, and they're always split into two halves. So the first is, where is that end application? So for me, this is where Salesforce is located, and this is my username and password. And that holds true if it's, you know, an FTP site, if it's NetSuite, whatever it may be, you know, mail, etc. And then what we want to do is create a lead. So what you can do here is actually connect out to Salesforce in real time using that connector we configured. So if we do that, what will happen is we'll log into Salesforce in real time, and the connector will actually bring you back a list of all the Salesforce APIs and data structures. So in this case, we want to access the lead API, and we're going to do a create operation on that. And if you carry on through the wizard, what will happen is you'll set Boomi up to be able to actually call that API and populate the data structure for that API request into Salesforce. And that holds common for all our branded connectors. So we have around 90 branded application connectors, but I always say that if you have an application out there that we don't have a connector for, we can still connect into it. It's just you, instead of using one of our branded connectors, you'd use what we call one of our technology connectors. So if that application exposes an API, be it REST or SOAP, or they expose a database, or maybe they expose a file on a local directory or an FTP site, we can use our technology connectors to call those APIs, access that database, get that file, rather than using the branded connector. But what you can also do is we have a connector SDK, so you can actually build a connector for that end application, should you so wish to as well. So we've configured up our Salesforce connector here, and we've done the same on the FTP side. We've set up where our FTP site's located, and we've configured that we want to get sample.csv from this directory. So once we've got those two endpoints together, that's when you look at our data mapping technology in the middle. And what I've done is I've just put an extra data map down here in the left, just to show you the Boomi Suggest feature, but it's actually not part of this integration process. So if we were to bring that up, what you can see here is the data map already knows the data structure of the CSV file, and because we connected to Salesforce, it's pulled back the data structure for the lead API. So what you can do is, you could drag and drop these across and build any functions in the middle as you see fit. So you might want to do some string manipulation or maths or dates or lookups, or go off to another connector, or maybe write some custom, JavaScript or Groovy code if there's something complex you want to do in the middle. But most of our customers, as I mentioned, actually click on Boomi Suggest. And what Boomi Suggest does here, excuse me, is it goes out to our community and says, has anybody taken a CSV file with these fields in it and tried to upload it to a Salesforce lead? And what you can see is I've actually got 12 elements in my CSV file, and Boomi Suggest has actually said, well, yes, somebody out there has done it before, and I've got 12 high confidence suggestions to map each of those fields across. So if we go next, we then get a list of what Boomi Suggest thinks the mapping should be. So you can see here last to last name, first to first name, etc. But one of the other things is you can see here there's a title on the Salesforce side. And if we click on this little information mark, it actually tells us that a lot of people build a function in the middle here to concatenate first name and last name and map it across to title in Salesforce. So somebody's already written that function for us. So if we're happy with what Boomi suggests, we can just go through the wizard, and you can see here it does all the mapping for you. And this is really big. It saves a lot of time. It's a lot less error prone than you building out all these, and it also maps a lot of these complex functions in the middle that somebody else has already built out for you. So that's exactly what I've got already built out here in my data map in here, but I've also got a few other different things, different functions in the middle before I do my mapping across to Salesforce. So at its essence, at its core, that's all you need to connect two systems together, but there's a lot more to Boomi than just that. So as I mentioned, there's capabilities in here to persist messages to a queue. If you want to build up resiliency within your integrations, you can do very advanced error handling. In this case, if there's an error, all I'm doing is raising an exception in the platform. You can do a lot of things around merging and splitting documents. You can do basic data cleansing. You can do caching. There's a whole bunch of different things. But one thing I wanted to show you here as part of the demo was our business rules engine, because this is very, very powerful. So when the CSV file comes in, what we do is pass it into our business rules engine, and again, via a wizard, you can build up business rules to validate that data and run some logic before passing that data further on through the integration. So I've already built a couple of rules here. So you can see here that I'm just building rules to say the first name cannot be empty, the last name cannot be empty, the email cannot be empty, and we have to have either a mobile or a phone number. So very quickly and easily you can build these business rules out. Or a more complex one is before the data even gets put into Salesforce, I might actually check to see if that lead already exists in there. So as part of the business rules, I can do a call out to Salesforce, and again via configuration, say I want to call Salesforce, I want to get the account information out of Salesforce, and I want to do a search by email. And I'll be inputting into that search the email from the CSV file. And if there are any matches, then this function will return me the Salesforce ID for that lead. So then what we can do is, once we pass it through that check, if there's any duplicates, we can come down this path, and instead of putting the lead into Salesforce, we can collate all those duplicate leads. We can then create an email. So give the attachment a name. So for me, recordsfile.csv, put in a message into the body of the email, and then use our mail connector to email us those duplicate records. So again, any questions, feel free to interrupt, otherwise I'll carry on. So once you've built this integration, then what you'd look to do is run this. So there's full testing capabilities within the platform itself. So what you'll see here is live, we're running the integration through our test. So it's actually going out to the FTP site, it's going to get that, collect all the data, run it through the business rules. If there's no duplicates and all the data is valid, convert into and upload it into Salesforce, or any duplicates, email them out to us. And what you'll see here is as it goes through each component, it will go either green or red. And what that means essentially is that every point you can see has something failed or has it passed. So at this point I can see, you know, what the shapes, what the data is coming in from the CSV file. And because we don't store any data as part of the platform, anytime you do these operations, it actually goes out to the Atom, retrieve that information. So you can see here, this is all the CSV data. And if it passes the business rules and gets transformed, at this point in time in Salesforce, we can see we've actually converted that CSV data into the XML data expected via Salesforce for the API. So it's a really great tool to do any debugging. And you can see here, I've gone and raised an exception, it's red, and you can look into that to see, you know, what the exception is. It's because we've got a duplicate record, and that will be raised up as part of the management tooling for the system. And then if we have a look now in Gmail, we've got an attachment which contains our duplicate record, which should be Wendy. There she is. And then if we pop back into Salesforce and do a refresh on our leads, all the other leads have been updated into Salesforce. So using Boomi to build out these integrations can be that quick and easy. And then there's a lot of other capabilities in here around deployment. So you can look to see, you know, when this integration was deployed and by whom and what the version number is, if there's any notes. And as we release multiple versions of this integration, if for some reason something breaks in the future, we can compare versions between each other. So there's a lot of capabilities on the deployment side from an operational perspective, and we can also migrate integrations from dev to test to prod, etc., taking along with them what we call environment extensions. So you might remember back in the build here, when I was configuring up like the FTP connector or the Salesforce connector or the mail connector, and I was putting in where these applications are located and my credentials to access them, we can actually abstract those out to what we call an environment extension. So as you migrate your integration from, say, dev to test to prod, it actually looks to the Atom to find out, well, where is my dev Salesforce instance? Where is my test Salesforce instance? Where is my prod Salesforce instance? And fills in these parameters based on which environment you're moving between. So if your Atom deployed and up and running and everything's happy, well, that's when you'd start looking into a lot of the management capabilities of the platform. So you'll be able to look into here and see when there were executions, you know, which ones failed, which ones passed, you know, why they failed. So we could pop into one of these and we can see the major connectors in our integration, and we can see, you know, what the data was coming in and out, and you can get quite detailed into what your integrations are doing, how long they took, how much data is going in and out, etc. And then you also may be interested in a number of the dashboards where you're looking for errors, you know, are your atoms down, how many executions you're going through, your throughput, all that kind of stuff. So it can be as detailed or as simple as you want. And the great thing with Boomi is we have a number of user roles, so you can restrict access to the user interface as much or as little as possible. So an operations person may only have access to this dashboard, while a developer may have access to the build page, for example. And also a lot of the functionality you see here is available via RESTful APIs. So some of our customers go, great, love doing all the building up in the tool, but I want to do my own automated testing, or maybe I have my own operations center with my own management tool and I want to build my own dashboards. They can pull out a lot of the data you've seen via those RESTful APIs. So if there's no questions on AtomSphere, I'll pop back into the presentation and just do a couple of slides on MDM and a couple on API management. Okay, I'll take that as a no. All right, so as I mentioned, once your integrations are up and running, most of our customers then start seeing they have a data governance issue, and they go along this maturity curve where They can see, you know, their data's not of the best quality. We're going to need rules and processes in place to govern that data, which eventually goes into full master data management. And why they may start thinking that is because once they plug all these systems together, they can start seeing, you know, there's broken business processes, who owns that data. There might be multiple instances of Salesforce or a database. You know, who's got the single source of truth? You know, if somebody updates to one system, you know, which fields of the update, or, you know, should we be validating or checking something before we move that update to other systems? So who has that single source of truth? And all these questions arise to, you know, why you need to look at an MDM platform. Oops. Go to the next slide. So some people think, well, I can do MDM with integration, but what they tend to find is very quickly there's a lot of integration processes that need to be developed to connect all the other systems. So if one of these blue dots happen to be Salesforce, for example, if somebody, you know, like myself, uploaded a new lead into Salesforce, that lead would need, you know, 11 other integrations to connect out to all these other systems to make sure they have the same view of that lead. And as your end systems grow, the amount of integrations required grows. So that's when MDM just simplifies that and makes it really, really easy. So that if you have your MDM as the center of your hub, if somebody makes a change in Salesforce, via Atomsphere, that data is extracted out of Salesforce, passed into the MDM. The MDM will do any data validation, any enrichment, any other checking it needs to do. And if it passes, the MDM, again, via integration, will push it out to all these end systems. So you can see, rather than needing 105 integrations to do that, you only need 15 to do that with MDM. So MDM becomes very, very powerful in that regards. So if we look at how MDM works, there's typically 4 steps to it. So the first is you need to define your data model. So you need to define, what does a customer look like, for example? You know, do they have a first name, a last name, a title, an address, you know, a phone number, an email address? You know, what does a product look like? Does it have a description, an item code, a price, etc.? So it's all about defining those data models for your golden records. And again, because we're a true multi-tenant platform, we can leverage Boomi Suggest to provide you with examples of those data models, because somebody within our 4,000 odd customer base has already defined what a customer looks like, or what a product looks like, what a location looks like. So once you define those data models, that's then when you look to deploy those data models into the MDM, and then tell the MDM who's going to interact with those data models. You know, is it Salesforce, Sugar, a database, an FTP site? Who needs to know about those data models? And once you define that's, yep.
Yep. Quick question for you. How does the MDM model differ from the traditional ESB that organisations have been building out? You know, with a you know, perhaps a central data warehouse traditionally. What are the key differences there?
Yeah. So a data warehouse really only stores your data and maybe retrieves very basic, meaningful data, but the whole point about an MDM is not only storing that data as a golden record, but providing data validation and enrichment. And it's really, for me, about the enrichment, where, as I mentioned before, an address, you might mistype that or miss the state hop or something like that. And an MDM, because it's able to plug out to data quality tools, is going to fill that missing information in for you and correct any errors. And then automatically push that back out to all the other end systems. So it's bi-directional, it's real time. Your entire infrastructure is up to date and knows that, yes, that's David Ireki, that's his address, that's his phone number, that's his email. Where a data warehouse, you know, isn't synchronizing all the other end systems with that same information.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so I think we got up to step 3, where now that the MDM knows which systems need to interact with that data model, you'd leverage Atomsphere to build out very simple integrations between the MDM and that end application. So much like you saw in the demo, most of those integrations will be an MDM connector, a data map, and then a connector for that end application, so Salesforce, for example. So really, most of those integrations are only comprised of 3 components, and then obviously vice versa to get that bi-directional data flow. So once you've built out those integrations to connect the MDM to those end systems, that's typically then when you hand it over to a data steward, and a data steward would sit in the MDM console, watch the data going in and out as it goes through any validation, enrichment, etc. And if any data ever gets quarantined, that's where they would spend most of their time to actually dig into the data, find out why it was quarantined, was it duplicated? Was there a data entry issue that, Locate or another system couldn't rectify? So they can then manually edit that data in the MDM. And if they're happy with, yes, that is the new view of that customer, then push that, save that in the MDM, and then the MDM can push that data out to all the other end systems. So in terms of an architecture, it's really one extra component compared to the deployment scenarios you saw before. So in this instance, we've got an on-premise Atom connecting up a database, SAP, and Salesforce. And we've got a number of integrations running there to not only connect these 3 applications together, but to connect them up to the MDM. So as an example, if someone were to create a new lead in Salesforce, via integration, that lead would be pulled down through the Atom and up into the MDM. The MDM would then do any data validation and any data enrichment required, and for example, may go out to a third-party tool like Locate to do the address checking. Once it's happy that yes, it passes all the checks and balances and that is the correct information for that lead, it will save it in the MDM as a golden record, and then via integration, it will come back down through the Atom and push that data out to the database and to SAP. So once that process is complete, all 3 end applications have the same view of that lead with the same correct information. So what makes us different to a lot of our competitors? As I mentioned, we're relatively new, 3 years old to the market, and because of that, we'll be able to leapfrog a lot of what our competitors have that same look and feel, the same user interface. Very important that we're pure cloud MDM. For MDM, there's no data ever on premise. We can plug into those open data quality systems, and we've got an SDK to allow that. We have support for those next-gen features. And again, we leverage our multi-tenant capabilities to provide you with suggestions on the data models. So if anybody wants to dig into MDM deeper, I'm happy to do that as part of another session because that's about a half an hour demo or so. So to tie off just a couple of last slides on API management. So once you've got all that data there, the data's correct, then a lot of people start talking around, well, we want to expose that data both internally and externally for mobile apps to use or new websites to use, etc. And if you're going to do that, people start saying, well, who's allowed to access it? How often are they allowed to? How are we going to handle versioning? Could we use analytics to monetize the use of those APIs? So that's then when you typically look at API management. So how API management works is there's typically 3 steps we look at. So that integration process you saw, Boomi is very, very good at wrapping that up with an API. So you could front that integration with a RESTful or SOAP-based API. So we're very good at doing legacy modernization, wrapping up complex database functionality with simple API requests. So once you build those APIs, then you can publish them, and we have an API catalog where you can browse for APIs and see what they do. And once you start using those APIs, then we have dashboards as well in the product to allow you to see who's using those APIs, how often, and from where. So when you're looking at API management, typically you're building out integrations like we saw, doing that file upload into Salesforce, but you're looking to put a layer of APIs on top of that to expose that capability out to someone else to use itself. And we've got a neat little feature in the tool called API Generate, which really helps you to do that, really helps wrap those integration processes or those legacy systems up with an API really quickly and really easily. And again, that leads to our citizen integrator heritage. So again, we're a single vendor solution. It's purely cloud-based. We're very, very good at creating and publishing any endpoint as an API, so turning legacy applications and systems into web services, you know, seeing who's using them and how. And again, because we're a centralized management tool, being able to see who's using those APIs wherever they may be. So that was everything I had in terms of the presentation and demo. I hope that hit all the right notes, but feel free to ask any questions should you have them.
Great. Thanks so much, David. As David just said, if you have any questions, just let us know. You can post your questions in the comments box in the meeting, and we're free to answer those questions for you. So if there's any questions, now's the time to post those. Okay, great. I don't see any questions coming through, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to send those questions through to sales@crmonline.com.au, or feel free to get in touch with the team, and we can schedule a few follow-up sessions for any of those that would like to get a bit more in depth to the platform. Certainly a very powerful platform. Dell Boomi offers so much scalability, optimizing those integrations, as David touched on, you know, limiting the amounts of connections with MDM management and so forth. So again, thank you so much, David, and thank you also, Glenn, for your input today as well. So well, I think we'll wrap it up there, and we'll look forward to having everybody else again for the next webinar. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.